Good. So we are live. Welcome, everyone, if you are watching this on the replay. And welcome, obviously, to anyone who has joined us already. And if you are joining us, as always, first of all, let me know that you can hear me. And I can already see, good evening. Hi, I can already see some of you waiting and joining us straight away, which is so amazing because this is happening every Wednesday. We're doing this back chat, as I call it. And we talk about scoliosis, but we also talk about other issues related to pain. Today, we're going to be talking about body image and mindset, because this is one of the things, and most of you know that I run a Facebook group, Yoga for Scoliosis community on Facebook. And one of the things that always comes up, and we talk about, what is your biggest problem with scoliosis? And a lot of you obviously say pain is one of the big things. I'm suffering from pain. But then the second most complaint is probably the one: I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way that it looks. And especially if you have a thoracic scoliosis, there might be that your scoliosis might be really visible, so that people can actually see if you are, especially now we're in summer where we're wearing more kind of tops and everything, you can see a little bit more skin. So people can probably see a little bit of a rib hump on one side. Same with lumbar scoliosis, your waist might look different. So this is one of the big topics which I was really keen on talking about with Dani today. So I'm here with Dani. Let me bring her on. Hi, Dani. So Dani is a fellow yoga teacher, and she is actually at the moment not in London in the UK, but she's joining us from Austria at the moment. But she does live in London normally, and she's got a really inspiring story herself about healing, and she has a lot of ideas. She's a lot of things to say about body image, about mindset, which is why I was really keen on doing this with her and talking to you, obviously, Dani. Um, so obviously, for anyone who's here, feel free to, obviously, we'll be chatting, I'll be asking her questions, but please make sure to ask your questions as well. This is why I really enjoy this kind of live exchange, because sometimes, if we just record it and you get it afterwards, you don't get the chance to kind of get involved. But know that I might not get to your questions straight away. There might be a little bit of a delay anyway. But I can see that you're here, and I can see Laura is here. So let us know where you're joining from, obviously, and let us know if you have any questions. And also, what are your thoughts on kind of body image, and how do you feel about your scoliosis? Good. So that was a lot of talking from me already. Sorry, Dani. But yes, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about you? What do you do, and what is your story?
Thank you for having me, Christine. So you and I went through a similar yoga teacher training, didn't we, a few years back? And it's really exciting for me to be here. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to talk with you today.
Lovely to have you.
For years, I have suffered from a swollen arm, which is a chronic swollen arm. It's called a lymphedema, and it's a direct result of my breast cancer treatment and surgery. And it's really interesting to talk to you about back, because I know you're a specialist in back pain and scoliosis and all sorts of back issues. And actually, I can really relate. Every time I listen to one of your lives or something comes up, I can always relate, because I don't really think it matters where you have something necessarily wrong with you. And that is, not wrong, but where you have something that you don't want to be there. And I can always relate. It's my arm, it could be your leg, it could be someone's ear. It doesn't matter what it is. Often we have such an aversion to anything that is a little bit unusual or unexpected, whether it gives you pain or it's a physical appearance, that the problem is escalated massively because we're rejected so much. So I would say I lived a very healthy life. I was a mummy to 3 lovely children. Everything was working to plan. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 33, I'm really pleased and proud and humbled to say this is 7 years ago. So I've been on a long journey since, but I've learned so much since, really. My initial treatment was surgery and chemotherapy and radiotherapy. I had a double mastectomy along the line. I had my ovaries out. Are you aware of the Angelina Jolie gene? It's the gene that heightens your chances of breast and ovarian cancer. So along my treatment, I found out I carry that, so I had more risk-reducing surgeries. And every time something changed, I was really sort of rejecting it. I didn't want to look different. I didn't want to be different. I was so pushing everything away. I think I made it really hard for myself. And then the swollen arm came, and I hated the swollen arm. And look, I'm in long sleeves now. I'm in Austria. I hope none of the children are going to interrupt me, but it's really hot here. And I'm still now quite conscious of having one arm that is fatter than the other arm.
Just to say, I have never noticed that.
Right.
I will look out for it now, but
good. I threw away all my t-shirts, all my dresses, everything went, because my whole focus was on my left arm. And probably you are like most other people. There's lots of other things that you could notice about me. You could notice my right arm, both of my legs. You could notice my bottom or my boobs, whatever it is. My focus was just on the left arm. And I had an appointment with a lymphedema specialist once, and the nurse said to me, have you ever considered mindfulness? And it's a really good way of dealing with chronic pain, chronic illness. And I was already going through my yoga teacher training, so I had access to it. I knew what it meant, but I was rejecting the idea because I wanted him to fix me. I wanted there to be a cure and for him to say, if you do X, Y, and Z, and I'm very good at following plans because I will stick to it. I wanted him to say, if you do X, Y, and Z, you will have a very slim arm and you can reverse the changes. But no one said that to me. And I have a feeling from our conversations and from what I have heard from you, it's similar with scoliosis and lots of back issues. There is so much you can do, but you might not be able to magic it all away. So I was left with initially quite grumpy. I left the hospital very grumpy because I thought, how dare me tell me to put up with it? What he's telling me is to put up with it. And it took a long time. And even now I sometimes go to bed and I remember him, and it was the wisest words anyone has ever said to me. I really needed to find that acceptance, and the acceptance only came with awareness, and I needed to find a place within myself to love myself the way I am. And that is a tall order, but it's absolutely doable.
Yeah, I mean, it very much reminds me of just now that you're saying it, when I was doing yoga, and I was in the same as just as you were describing now. So I had been diagnosed with scoliosis, obviously already when I was a child. So it was already there, it was already in the back of my mind. And I was really kind of focusing on it. And then I went to a yoga teacher and I said, what can I do for my scoliosis? And she said, you need to take responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear you do this, and this pose every day and everything will be fine. So it sounds very, very similar. So how did you kind of get from this? How long did it take you to come out of this, probably where you thought, well, this is rubbish advice. What am I going to do with this? To then actually saying, maybe there's something about it.
I think I dismissed it for a long time to come, but what I had learned in the years previously to really struggling with my lymphedema was that I did take personal responsibility. I always felt very much the strong sensations. The doctors had given me chemotherapy, multiple surgeries, radiotherapy, and from the day they said, well, that's it, we've done enough, we've done everything we can, sort of like good luck to you, and let's hope your 3-month scan is okay. That moment put so much fright and fear in myself that I knew I had to take personal responsibility. And I really don't think it matters what it is that you do, as long as you do something. The worst is that we hide away and we stop trying, becoming active. We stop trying, looking for different ways. Because with backs, I know with lymphedema and other things, so many different things work for different people. The problem is that often, like, I dress up to hide it, so a little bit out of mind, out of sight really helped, because we do know from many, many, many studies what we focus on expands. So my awareness was going to 90% of my arm, where really I should, and what I did along the line is I still give my arm 20% of my attention, because I need to moisturize it, and I need to do my exercises, and there is things I can do with it. But then I stop myself. I will not obsess over it. And, if it makes me feel better to wear long sleeves, if they're comfortable, I will do. But I also get my arm out now, and I think, oh gosh, I feel so free. It's a lovely feeling. I don't need to cover up, and it's great. So I have good days and bad days, and I definitely do a bit of both. I think the problem I see with lots of people, and also with myself, or especially, say, people struggling with weight or deformed shoulders, like you say, or sometimes you have a chest, don't you, with scoliosis that is a little bit more out. People then don't go to the gym because you feel like you're in an environment where people might judge you. People actually enjoy our Zoom yoga classes at the moment because no one can see them. You're not judged. You just do it for yourself. And I think that the risk is that we shy away and we stop finding ways. And I have spent hours and hours online trying to find a cure. And now I spend hours and hours and hours making sure I nourish my whole self. And that is eating well and sleeping well and having less stress and moving and exercising and bringing more joy into my life. Anything that makes me a happier person, I can guarantee you it'll take the attention of my arm. I also went on, and that is years later, after the nurse told me, after I dismissed the nurse, I went on a mindfulness course, and the principles are very familiar to you and I through yoga. It's the awareness, and through that awareness, we can bring acceptance into ourselves, and that really, really, really helps. And also, no one is perfect. No one is perfect. And the pain that we experience, so sometimes scoliosis, for example, comes with pain and sometimes it doesn't. Is that right? Is that
absolutely.
a good assumption? So sometimes it's physically painful. I totally get it. That's probably a little bit of a different story. And sometimes you've got the scoliosis, you don't want it, you reject it, you don't want to look like that, and it's a new bother, right? I totally get it. What I think is really important is that we accept that the emotional impact of anything that is going on with us physically is as important as the physical ailment itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whether that is good health or bad health, whatever it is that we're sort of dealing with, the emotional side is massive, and it really needs to be talked about.
And also in terms of pain, I think this is very, very important, because there is a direct link, and there have been lots of studies about back pain being related to overall happiness in your life, and your emotional state and what is going on.
It's also a real downward spiral, and that is what mindfulness really can help me stop. Is, when you're on autopilot and you're in a car, for example, and you're going from A to B, and you get to B and you're like, oh gosh, I really don't even know how I got here. You know that feeling?
Yeah.
That is on autopilot. Mindfulness really helps us to get off autopilot, because we continuously want to be aware of what's going on outside of us and inside of us in a non-judgmental way. And it's really helped me, because sometimes I'd be quite busy. Like, I've got 3, they're older now, but I had 3 young children. They're loud and and I was really busy, and I could be on the school run and the kids would be on the scooter. Like, I was busy. I wasn't hanging out, like not doing anything. I was very, very busy. But at the same time, I had this back chat in the back of my mind going, oh yes, but if you have another infection in your arm, then you have to have more antibiotics. And if you have to have more antibiotics, you always have to have them for 2 weeks. And if you have them for 2 weeks, then your whole gut and your microbiome is going to go to pieces again. And you've worked so hard with all your probiotics. And then what if the infection doesn't clear up? We might not be able to go on our holiday. Oh gosh, what if we can't go on our holiday? Then the kids are going to be so disappointed. How am I going to tell them? Do you see what I'm doing here? And it hasn't even happened. Mm-hmm. Yes, I might have had antibiotics for an infection in my arm, which is one of the risks of a lymphedema. It gets infected very quickly. But all the worries, they haven't actually happened when I was worrying about them non-stop. Mm. They were tearing me down. The weight on my shoulder was so huge. It was almost too big to sort of carry at times. And I think that is what mindfulness can teach us. It can teach me to recognize, there you go. Yeah. I'll give you 2 minutes and then you snap out of it, because whatever you're worried about is an illusion. Hasn't even happened.
Absolutely. Let me just have a quick look at the chat. So I've got Lauren is saying hello from Ohio, US. So some people asking about braces at the moment. And this is a really good point, obviously, because, and we're not, so somebody's asking, do braces help? So we're not going to talk about, and neither of us are bracing specialists, by the way. So obviously I work with people that have scoliosis, but what I want to touch on is, because if you're talking about a brace, you're probably talking about a teenager, and you're probably talking about someone who's in a very vulnerable kind of like state of their lives. At the end of the day, they're developing. They might already, even without anything going on, they might be very conscious about the way they look. And then you're kind of putting them into a brace, which is another whole dimension and another whole, I don't know if you've got any advice for us on maybe for mothers who have got teenagers and kind of trying to help them get through this time. And obviously you've got daughters yourself, so maybe you can give us a little bit of a...
Probably the most important to talk about self-esteem, especially if you're helping your daughter or your son or a younger adult. Interestingly enough, for my lymphedema, I was also given very tight compression garments, and I chose black ones, and I had to wear sleeves. So for years, I was walking around with a black compression. I looked like a robot, like Michael Jackson. And actually drew more of my attention came towards it. Everyone asked about it, so I couldn't escape it. And at the end of the day, it always reminds you of something that you don't want to have. So I agree with you. A brace, probably, if it's helpful from a physical point of view, it's, I'm sure, a good idea if your doctor prescribes it to you. It needs to be spoken about. And I think a teenager, or even as an adult, a role play always helps. So, okay, people are going to ask you why you have a brace. How can we talk about it? How can we explain it? What can you say? Sometimes we're so stuck and lost for words, you make it a bigger thing than it is. But actually coming up with the one-liner of saying, I've got this brace because X, Y, and Z, the other person is going to move on. You're going to make it so uneventful. They're going to forget about that you're even wearing it.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to what comes with the brace. Okay, we're going to get a brace. Let's talk about it, how we will communicate it. Let's get some new outfits. How do we feel comfortable? It's really important that you make it part of a package and not just get the brace and the brace is the solution. The brace is one component and much more needs to be spoken about. So I did a little bit of research. I'm going to read this off actually. And it actually touched on teenagers. So we have, with severe or scoliosis, there is a lower rate of social participation amongst scoliosis sufferers, starts in teenage years. So I think that's really important to be addressed. Mm-hmm. We all worry about social media and all the other things our teens and the younger generation has to worry about. And this is even more to worry about. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out. Poor self-esteem, the negative self-talk increases, and it can lead to depression and anxiety. So I think it's probably as important to support your young person or yourself with an emotional crutch, and whether that is speaking or talking therapy or just discussing it openly and more often and trying to find the positives. And I'm not saying you need to, pretend that you want to have a brace now if you've got scoliosis. Of course not. Why would you? No, you don't. But there are so many other things that we can really value about ourselves and talk about, instead of making the focus just go to that particular thing.
I think that the role play idea is a really, really good one. And already, as you were kind of describing that spiral, when you think about, oh, I'm gonna have to wear a brace, and then people are gonna say this, and then this is gonna happen, and then what if this happens, and then what if, and you're kind of breaking that, isn't it, by just talking it through.
Well, people might ask, and that's okay. And it would be very odd if you, as a teenager, or you go into a work environment and your colleagues don't ask, because that's weird and you've got this elephant in the room. And if people don't ask, you have the choice to say. But if you're prepared, I think it's better for you, because you feel a little bit ready. You want to be ready for that situation, I think. Role play always helps, even when you talk it through with a friend before you have a doctor's appointment or whatever it is. You just get it in your head and set the scene for the outcome you want. And you don't want to be a victim. You're not a victim.
No.
Our body, we're not our thoughts. We experience the world through our body. We can maneuver and guide our thoughts. And it's really important to not get too attached to this physical body of ours. These ideas and this body image, what does it mean? What does it mean? Because I have a fat arm, or because you've got scoliosis? What does it mean? I can't love myself. I can't feel secure in myself or value myself? No. But very often we have very negative emotions towards scoliosis or things like that. And our behavior changes because of it. And it will change, but it's our choice how it changes. And you have years of being an adult, and you would speak to so many people with scoliosis now, where people are trying to make the change. That's why they're watching your YouTube lives. That's why they're coming to yoga. That's why you have all these experts talking to you. People seek the change. And maybe something you will say one day will hit home, and the person can make a change. One example, I've been living a very much plant-based lifestyle for years, because I really feel my energy levels are better. I feel great for the environment, great for myself. And my husband never embarked on that lifestyle with me until he watched The Game Changers, the movie. And as soon as he watched the movie, he goes, "Oh, darling, do you think we should try it?" And I was like, "What do you mean, try what?" And he said, "Well, go vegan." I was like, "I can't believe it. I've been vegan for years. Have you not even noticed?"
Have you not noticed?
Have you not noticed? But obviously, whatever the language they've used, it touched something in him, and that was the right message for him to go and try.
At the right moment in his life, obviously.
So I would say, even if you're today 75 or 85 or 95 and you've suffered with scoliosis or anything else, if you haven't found your solution of how you can maybe live it a little bit better, then don't give up, because there might be out there in 5 minutes or in 5 days, and it might really be what you need to make the changes that make you feel a bit better.
Yes. So Debbie is saying, I used to wear, or not, a Boston brace. So that probably sounds like, she was supposed to, but she didn't know all the time. Yeah. But be jealous of the girl in my school who had the Milwaukee, so she had a different brace. As it was visible. Okay, So whereas mine wasn't so much. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean this is
and you know, as adults we can maybe live with it a little bit better, but as a teenager all you want to be is like everyone else. You want
yes.
your parents to be like everyone else's parents. You want to be, and you would just want to blend in. And if my mum ever wore, I don't know, pink lipstick and pink earrings, I was mortified. You know, most of us are. Or to wear a brace that is visible, I mean, you just want to hide away. Debbie, I can really feel, I can feel what you are going through. It makes total sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very difficult.
It's coming back to that body image, and you know, so many chats we have, and so much of what we consume now is through social media. The problem with social media is I don't think there is anything wrong with it, but because of how the algorithms work, it keeps showing you what you were interested in yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was all plants and yoga and healthy breakfast. The algorithm is just going to show me that. And I think often that stops us from looking elsewhere. I think one of the biggest, because I could never say to anyone, I eat a certain way. I don't care how you eat. I can only tell you how it makes me feel, you know. But I would always say, never take anyone's word for it. You just got to try yourself and dig a little bit deeper and put your thinking cap on and continue. I think when we give up and when we think there's nothing else anyone can do for me and I live with that forever and I might have another glass of red wine and I might have to have 3 bars of chocolate because my back is, you know, annoying and my arm is fat. I think that we can all mull in a little bit of that feeling from the same. But mindfulness can help us to zap out of it and go, actually, I've been feeling like that for long enough. Is there anything else I could try?
So with your condition in your arm, what is it called again? Lymphedema?
Yeah.
Is it something that could get worse? Or I'm just wondering what is kind of do you have any fears about the future?
Yeah. And I don't know how, and you'll explain to me how it translates to scoliosis. So if you've ever seen the pictures of people with elephant limbs, elephantitis, arms and legs that are huge, that is a risk. So it needs managing and monitoring. And I also was it Debbie, I think, said, I should wear my sleeve, my compression garment a lot more than I do, but it makes me feel extremely claustrophobic. And so I manage it depending on how I can sort of cope with it. I've stopped worrying about the fears and the future too much because it's done me so much disjustice over the last few years. So I've had years where I worried so much about not surviving and not seeing my children grow up and not seeing their first day at school. And I've been here to see it all. I've been here to see them walk through the school gates. I've been here to pick them up when they had their last day at primary school. I am so fortunate. It's incredible, but I almost feel like I've wasted a lot of years worrying about the what ifs.
Yes.
I think when we have a physical sort of problem, what if someone is going to think I've got a hunchback? What if the yoga teacher doesn't know what to do with me because I've got scoliosis? Because not everyone is as trained as you are. What if, sod it. Because we can maybe worry about it and make sure we can manage our symptoms and manage what life throws at us when we get to that bridge. And it's not always possible. Of course, I have that doubt and that fear, but I recognize it much quicker now. And I have the awareness of what's going on inside of me.
Yes.
And the real benefit, I would say. Even if it means I have days where I think, okay, really, I've been really quite anxious. My thoughts have been drawn to X, Y, and Z, but I recognize it. And I think that's a really valid lesson. So if anyone can spend a little bit more time with themselves of just noticing, and if you think, gosh, whatever you've been thinking about is absolute rubbish and all you do is moan in your head, that's fine. It is what it is. Just get on with it. Recognize and get on with it. We're all allowed to have all the feelings in the world.
Yeah.
We can't just attract the happiness and the positive feelings. They wouldn't exist without the others in the first place. But to allow it all. And I don't think anyone needs to say, oh, I'm really, really happy with my, scoliosis and it's giving me grief, but I'm loving it. No, I'm not saying that. It's great to say as it is, and find a little bit of love for your maybe wonky spine or fat arm, or I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So Laura's saying, what about when you go to a pool or to the beach? I really feel embarrassed. I guess everybody is looking at me when I turn back. It's awkward for me. So many times I avoid beach gathering.
Yeah, and that's what I said earlier. The lower rate of social participation is exactly what was it, Laura?
Yeah. Laura, yeah.
What Laura's thinking. I think it would be really interesting, Laura, to do a little experiment and invite some friends and get a notepad out and actually have a look how many people really pay attention to you and for how long. And then what happens? So if you have 30 people on the beach near you, if 10 turn their heads and stare at you in your brace, and I'm sure you look gorgeous beside your brace.
So she doesn't have a brace, but she feels she feels embarrassed about the way that it looks on her back.
About how it looks. And then what people do, what do they do? They might look at you, Laura, and then what do they do? They probably look away and mind their own business, right? So, and then what?
And then
even if you meet them, yeah? So even if you say you have a chat with them at the beach bar or anything, or if you never see them again, what does it matter? We see so many people that we look at because of different reasons. People have different colored hair. People might have lots of piercings. I stare at people when they have tattoos all over them because partly I really like the way it looks, but I probably glance a little bit too long. And sometimes it's important to notice our own behavior because often what we worry about other people is what we do. And maybe, Laura, I don't know, maybe you also look at people sometimes and you notice that you are aware of other people and how they look. But you know what? I guarantee you a lot of people aren't very much aware of how you look. They're so busy minding their own business. And they're so busy looking after their own children or applying sun cream. I really think they might look at you, but I don't think much goes in because we don't, do we?
Yeah.
So maybe a little experiment to see what happens if everyone looked. Laura, what happens? Maybe nothing. Maybe they can look and look and look because you've got the most loveliest of smiles. But I totally understand, which is why I'm here with my long sleeves. So Laura, I get you. Laura, I get you. It's a difficult one.
So Aaron is saying, I had the same problems with worrying about what people were thinking about me. And then I realized that no one is thinking about me. They are too busy worrying about themselves. So just what you just said, isn't it?
Yes. But again, Christine, I say it, another lady is saying it. You'll probably find all these quotes on YouTube. Unless you feel it deep in your gut, deep in your belly, or in your heart center, whatever people say won't mean anything. Or I will have to find that feeling so that you can run around the beach as carefree as anyone and not worry about your back or if you're wearing a brace or anything like that. So it's finding that place and maybe a little bit more awareness, what really goes on, a little bit more looking, a bit more like, is actually everyone staring? And taking the attention off you. Sometimes I feel like the attention was very much in my arm. It was all about my arm. It was all about me. But, people are all about them. So they probably don't notice. But it's finding a voice that resonates with you and then it'll make sense. Until you feel it in your gut, it's a hard place. Do you know the feeling when everything makes sense, someone says, and you still can't quite feel it? You know when...
Oh yeah, absolutely. You understand it with your head and yes, it all makes sense, but then something else is missing. Something else has to happen until it's kind of, and sometimes you have to hear it over and over again, isn't it? And until one day it clicks, isn't it? And
until my husband said, I think being vegan would be a good idea after I ate plant-based for many, many years. So we all need that aha moment.
Mm.
And in
Yes.
the meantime, I do think, there are solutions. In the meantime, I don't know, Laura, do you wear an astro when you go to the beach bar? Or is there anything else that we can just use as a little crutch? Because I think it's very hard to go from A to B and just make that jump. Until you get to B, what do we do? Is there a little crutch? Is there something we can do to improve our well-being?
Yeah, which again kind of what I was thinking about that's why I asked you about, do you have any fears about the future? Because obviously with scoliosis, you've got the pain is one thing, the way you look is the other thing, and then but there's also always that at the back of your mind, is it going to get worse? And unfortunately, just the general line from doctors is if your curvature is, I think it's something like 25 degrees is probably what their textbook says, it's going to get worse 1 degree every single year. So then obviously you start to calculate, okay.
Yeah.
So have you got any suggestions?
I have a real, not a suggestion, but I have a real problem with that because, because that is talking about statistics, right? The statistic says with every year it gets a degree worse, or however you call it. The statistics doesn't mean anything to anyone. It's utter nonsense because whatever applies to you is 100%, right? So with my getting the breast cancer I had at the age of 33, my chances were about 3%. Nothing, right? You think, well, 97%, I would not have had breast cancer at the age of 33. You would sway in utter reassurance that it's not going to be you, because you're not going to be the 3%, really, are you? But it was me. And I did have the gene, and I had lots of surgeries and lots of things to deal with. I was always actually on the wrong side of statistics. So you could say, oh, she's unlucky. Yes, I was. Okay, I was unlucky. But statistics only mean they always are 100% to you. Because if you're on the other side, well, your curve might not change per a percent a year. That is you also. So I think what's important is to say, okay, there are some risks. So instead of saying the statistics is, and this is what's going to happen to me, there are some risks, and the risks are that. And then you can say, but are all these people that are being accounted for, do they look after themselves like I do? Do they pay attention to their back? Do they do Pilates or yoga, or do they go to chiropractors? Or I don't know, there are many lines of treatments that you have. Do they eat well? Do they move enough? Do they lower their alcohol consumption? Do they smoke or do they not smoke? Surely that has an impact on our overall health. How are their stress levels? How do they sleep? How is their emotional life? How much do they love? How many people do they have to cuddle? Are there people in their lives who really carry them and hold them? These are all really, really important factors. And I'm sure they have a big impact on any of our future outcomes. And then, you know what, if it hits me again, and if I'm the one, then you have to deal with it then. If your spine gets worse, and people talk about surgery, obviously, so much that can go wrong. But I always know if anything ever goes wrong again, I know with hand on heart, I will be able to say I've done everything to keep myself as healthy as possible. And it's my oath. I live by it every single day. I am important. You're important. And everyone listening to us today, your spine is important. Your back is important. You are really important. And it's not a luxury to look after yourself. It's a necessity. And we know when there's something wrong with us, we have to look after ourselves, because suddenly, we've got to go and have massages. We've got to have doctor's appointment. Yes. It's not a luxury. It's something we've got to do. We've got to learn to really embrace looking after ourselves. It's the most important thing we've got.
I love that. I love that. And the whole thing of you do everything that you can, but then, and that's fine, but then it's the spiraling, noticing when you get into that point where there's unuseful things happening in your mind that might be contributing to your sanity, and well, not, you know, your mental health obviously kind of declining, and not being useful anymore, because obviously there's only so much thinking about your condition that will be
Yeah.
useful, but at some point it's not going to be useful, is it?
Often, you know, when we teach a yoga class, and sometimes I'm a little bit more physical, so I ask my students to think about the kneecap or think about the thigh or contract certain muscles. And what that is doing to us and our thinking is we're really sort of reducing our thoughts to that particular, say, shoulder blade or collarbone, whatever it is. So you're really concentrating on a particular part in your body, and it stops your thoughts going everywhere else. Honing in and drawing in your thoughts. And it's a really good way of staying very present, because I know from my mother-in-law, Dee, are you watching maybe, who's a scoliosis lady, and she's lived with it for most of her life, or all her life. You probably know more about her scoliosis than me. And it comes with pain, and that is so frustrating because it stops you in your tracks sometimes, and you would like to do so many things, and sometimes you just can't. So that's a whole other level to really sort of touch on and think about. If you have got pain, also not to give up, and to really try and find anything that works for you. There's so much, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. And I always say to my clients, notice if the pain moves around, and if it does, that's really good news. Because that means that change is possible.
Yeah.
So it means that there is something that can be done. It's not fixed, you know, it's not always there. So, and just having hope, focusing on, as you say, because what doesn't work is when you say to yourself, I can't do this, I have to stop thinking. That just doesn't work, does it? It's always better to give yourself something else to do, or focus on something else, as you say. You're focusing on a particular part of the body, maybe focusing on a part of your body that feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, I was so confused at times with my arm that I thought my other arm had something wrong with it, and it was too scary. I mean, really, I suddenly thought, gosh, something is wrong with it. It's just I was getting distorted. And sometimes it's really important to think, actually, today's a good day, and to remember that, because our mind has the tendency to only ever remember what goes wrong. And so if you reflect back on your week, for example, the first thing our mind is going to do is it's going to hop back to the moment where we've had an argument, where someone's been annoying, where we might have had an accident with the car. That's the first thing you're going to remember. You're not going to remember the 5 minutes of bliss and quiet when you had a cup of tea and life was okay. I'm not saying amazing, but okay. The mind doesn't remember. It is our job to make us remember. And it's really, really important to say, is it always a problem? Or maybe I'm really worried when I go to the beach, and that is one part of my life when I really am very conscious of how I look. Okay, that's okay. You don't go to the beach every day, maybe, and there are many other times where you actually feel okay. And it's really good to put that also in proportion.
Yeah.
If you're struggling with pain, obviously, I know from my mother-in-law, it's okay when she's lying flat. So it's really lovely. She always tells me, oh, I've read a whole book and it felt good. I felt good. And she really makes an effort to embrace the moments where she hasn't got the pain and to remember those. Because otherwise, the first thing your mind is going to do is going to tell you how awful everything is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little monkey, that mind, isn't it, of ours?
It is a monkey, yes.
Absolutely. We've got to train it. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, Dani. Is there anything else you've got to share with us, or any other advice?
No, I can't wait to listen to your next YouTube. So I think it's great what you do. It's fascinating, and I'm really pleased you want to also talk about, or we did talk about, the emotional side to physical problems today, because it's what I'm really, really passionate about.
Yes, absolutely.
I think everything I've had to go through physically with all my surgeries and X, Y, and Z, I think it was always much easier to deal with than any of the emotional baggage that came with it. And it's important to recognize. And I think often when you're dealing with scoliosis, your doctor won't talk to you about the emotional side. They'll try and, look at everything else and the anatomy of it.
Exactly.
And it's really important to talk about that.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me here to have a break.
Oh.
I lost you.
Yes, yeah, you just broke up a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much, Dani. I'm sure that there were a lot of golden nuggets there, and I hope it really resonated with people. And obviously, even though you don't have scoliosis, I think you can really relate to to that. You've got quite an extreme story of healing and of recovery, obviously yourself, and I think it's very, very relevant, everything that you've shared with us today, and I really hope that people can really appreciate the wisdom.
And you know what? I don't think in the end of the day it matters whether it's scoliosis, it's lymphedema, whether people go through a breakup, whether you have financial problems. They hurt you. It's pain. And it's important to talk about that pain and have a space and a safe place where we can discuss it. And regardless of what it is and where it comes from. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.